The Department of Labor is next on my list. Former Congresswoman Lori Chavez Dreamer is the leader there. Again, just some stats. Doesn't fly above the radar here, but these job reports that keep coming in come in ahead of expectations. In April, it was 177,000. And again, because it's good news and it makes sense and it flies in the face of the narrative that the media has, they don't pipe that up. This was Biden. They'd be like, oh my God, guess what's happening? But the bottom line is that look at our jobs reports and what we're doing. And the results speak for themselves. Everyone's telling you everything's going to crash and be bad. Not when you look at the numbers, though. So anyway, I'll move over to Marco Rubio. Now, he is running the Department of State. And the funny thing about Marco Rubio, by the way, is obviously that's our focus because that's the cabinet job. But as you recall, he's got, he's the archivist of the United States. He's running USAID, which I guess isn't that big. I mean, it's kind of underneath there anyway. So it's kind of funny. But you think about all the stuff that falls underneath Marco Rubio in the State Department. These envoys that are out there rescuing and returning people. And we talked to Seb Gorka about that, right? But the hostage, the bringing Americans back. We talked about a couple, Mark Fogel, the ballerina, all from Russia coming back. That falls under the State Department. The negotiations on the Panama Canal, the Ukraine deal, what's going on in the Middle East. All of that is happening under the umbrella of the State Department. And the thing is that it's all happening as well at the same time that he's doing this massive reorganization. You remember we had Tammy Bruce on the show when we were over at the White House. I asked her about Ukraine. I talked to her about what we're doing with China, but then we also talked about this massive reorganization that Secretary Rubio is leading to make us more effective and efficient so that there's not these layers of bureaucracy that stand between what we're trying to do and what we're trying to communicate to our various embassies and consulates. And I actually give them a ton of credit because I think that the DOD and the Department of State are probably the two most bureaucratic places on earth. But Marco Rubio is leading this really great effort to not just streamline us, but to get us focused. So that's awesome. All right. After the S's, we hit the T's. That leads us to the Department of Transportation, where Sean Duffy is there. Listen, I feel like a father who's trying to decide which of my children is the best, which you never can. But there's a great thing. I feel like we went from Pothole Pete, who ran out to the cameras for every PR stunt. But think about this for a second, because this is how I do it. I was very critical that he shouldn't have gotten chosen in the first place, because Pete Buttigieg was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. It had 66 buses. I wrote that in my first book. Actually, no, my third book, Radical Nation. About what were his qualifications? When he got confirmed, Biden said, I'm glad to have one of the youngest and first openly gay person in the cabinet, because Rick Grinnell had been acting, just so you know, when he was DNI under Trump's first term. And that's what he's qualified. I mean, that's what you're calling out, not his expertise, not his background. But think about this for a second, just to put this in perspective. The Secretary of Transportation oversees the highways, the seaways, the roadways, the airways. There wasn't one area where there wasn't a massive problem under Pete Buttigieg's leadership. Not one. He always had an excuse. But there was problems that plagued every area. And all he did was a series of PR stunts. He would get his bike brought to him by his security detail, dropped off a block before the DOT, get out and ride it, and be like, look I'm promoting bicycles. It was a joke. You take Sean Duffy, though, the current secretary. He's getting his hands dirty in a way that's unbelievable. This massive air traffic control reform that Duffy announced is so critical. No more kicking the can down the road. I mean, when you start to hear how the infrastructure of our current air traffic control is maintained, floppy disk, copper wires. I mean, seriously, it's unbelievable that we haven't had more issues in this space. But Sean Duffy's taking the challenge head on. And I love how forthright he's being, how active he's being, and he's taking the charge head on with industry leaders, congressional partners, making life better and safer for us. I mean, they think about Pete Buttigieg. He got billions of dollars to the Inflation Reduction Act, which was a stupid name thing anyway. And he had nothing to show for it. How many Chargers actually got built? None. Sean Duffy's leading the effort and getting results, and I love it. All right, we move over to the Department of Treasury. And you got the shining star, guys. From a media perspective and an influence perspective, Secretary Scott Bessent, hands down, one of the most impressive guys. And he's understated. He's not flashy, but he's smart. And this is big difference. I want to ask you this. Do you remember who it was under Biden? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Janet Yellen. I mean, honestly, she's the one that told us that inflation would be transitory. Yeah, transitory. Good job, Janet. Anyway, Scott Bessent, he's not taking a backseat to anybody. He's getting out there, dealing with this. In his background, I mean, this is a guy who had a ton of experience, but he's gotten back to the basics of what we need to do. I love how he's not just addressing trade, which is not entirely in his bailiwick, but he's taken up a leading role in that, obviously on tariffs. But he's also talking about getting the deficit under control and bringing in more money to the Treasury. Again, just an amazing, amazing individual. And I think a lot of the reason you're seeing him lead a lot of the efforts is because of this. And I don't think that anyone thought that he'd be a household name when he was getting confirmed. And he is just, I think there's a reason that President Trump is continuing to rely on him the way he is. All right. Let's get to the Department of Veteran Affairs, our buddy, our friend of the show. And by the way, remember this, Doug Collins was on air on this show when he got named Secretary of the Department of Veteran Affairs. He's a great veteran. He served both the Navy, the Air Force. But I want to play you a clip of some of the stuff that he's doing. Take a look.
We're 100 days into the second Trump administration, and our progress so far has been historic. The American people gave President Trump a mandate to shake up Washington, and that's exactly what he's doing. Here's the change we brought to the Department of Veterans Affairs in the first 100 days of the second Trump administration. We are refocusing our core mission, which is providing the best possible care and benefits to veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors. That means we're making sure veterans get the health care choices they were promised under the Mission Act. We're taking thousands of employees off of remote work and bringing them back into the office where we can work as a team to better serve veterans. We're phasing out treatment for gender dysphoria and directing all savings to helping paralyzed veterans and amputees. We're accelerating the deployment of our electronic health record system after the program was nearly dormant under the Biden administration. We are processing a record number of disability claims. We're redirecting hundreds of millions of dollars from our non-mission critical efforts to health care, benefits, and services that directly support VA beneficiaries. And we've ended DEI at the department, reversing the divisive Biden-era policies and stopping more than $14 million in DEI spending.
Okay, you get the hint there. He's doing a lot, and he's actually got the focus on veterans, on caregivers, where it's supposed to be. Cutting out the bureaucracy and the red tape to make sure that the people who have served our country get the benefits they have earned. And that's full stop. That's what it should be about. Making sure those people get the health care and the other critical services to make their lives better and to reflect the service they gave us as veterans. I want to touch on two other things before we finish. OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. I've heard, if you've watched the show before, you know that I think the hidden gem in the cabinet is Rust Vote. And the Doge efforts that Elon Musk led are only going to come to fruition under the leadership of Rust Vote. This guy is a master of the budget of the federal workforce, and he understands the opportunity at hand to codify the savings that exist into law. Okay? So all these things that Doge finds, it's Russ's job to make sure that we root them out, we codify it so it doesn't happen again. Reshaping the federal workforce, all under Russ. These things that are happening, and to make sure the effort continues, all Russ. And so, again, I want to underscore how critical and important that is. Now, the last thing I want to say, and I know it's not a cabinet position, so it's a point of personal pride, is I think that what's going on in the White House comms and press area is so important to mention. Having been a White House press secretary, I know the pressure, the staff challenges that you're dealing with, and what Caroline, Jason Chung, Taylor Budowich have done over there to revitalize that press office, to meet the moment, to bring the content to where we are, and think of all the different ways, the White House Wire, the websites, the digital production, the surrogate briefings, and the other products that they have brought out, to make sure that we can communicate more effectively with the American people, to tell them what President Trump and his cabinet are doing is so important. And I just want to tip my hat to them for all of that amazing, amazing work. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.